Hey guys, if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for links to some great online retailers. There's also individual links for knives that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the CJRB Kicker with the new recoil lock, which we have talked about a little bit on the Krag, but I think we're going to see this lock on some more knives. Anyways, interesting knife. I have a lot to say about it, as usual. This knife was sent to me directly by CJRB. I'll let you guys see their Instagram there. Give them a follow. They're doing a lot of interesting and innovative stuff, and they seem to be continuously coming out with amazing budget knives, in general, and then they've got a few absolute grand slams. So if you're on Instagram and you're not following them, I would suggest that you do, because they've got some really cool stuff, I think, that's coming up in the future. Thank you so much to my generous patrons for supporting me right now. If you'd like to get your hands on some cool stickers and some other benefits, there is, of course, a link down in the description. Your support would mean the world to me. And please follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. All right. Let's go ahead and get a measurement on this knife. It is not a small knife. It is definitely longer than the Krag, as far as I know, coming in at 8 1/4. Is the Krag 8 1/4? Maybe it's about the same length. 8 1/4 inches overall. Blade length 3 1/2 inches. Cutting edge about 3 1/8. This is pretty similar to most knives that I prefer to carry, so that's good. How about some size comparisons up against the Ontario Rat Model 1? Rat 1 is coming in at 8.6 inches overall, so you can see that the Rat's a little bit longer. How about up against the Spyderco PM2? Spyderco PM2 is coming in at 8.3 inches overall. How about up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue? Ritter Hogue is coming in a little bit shorter at about 8 inches overall. And last but not least, the Spyderco Para 3. Spyderco Para 3 is coming in at 7 1/4 inches overall. How's the action on this guy? Much like the Krag, it's pretty easy to manipulate. You pull back on that little deal right there, and the blade falls down to the point where it runs into, I guess, that where the little bar is, right? It's very similar to an axis lock, except that on an axis lock, let me get out one of mine. On the axis lock, when you pull the thing down, it can go all the way into, well, that one didn't do it. It can actually fall all the way into the handle on its own, right? This area is not, this area right here, down here at the bottom is not being obstructed by whatever is acting as the detent. On this guy, even if you've got it pulled down all the way, you still run into that point right there. However, you definitely can still, I think, can you completely whip it closed? Let me try that real quick. Yeah, you totally can whip it closed. It just takes a little bit more effort. Is that a flaw in the design? Not really. It's just going to be a preference thing, right? People who are used to the axis lock might find it, well, it's kind of a bump in the road, but whatever. The flipper tab absolutely will deploy it without any need of wrist, but it is a little bit light, I guess, because of the nature of the lock. There are Omega springs in there. If you'd like to see that, I have a review of the CJRB Krag that operates exactly the same way. Something that I do like about this lock over the axis lock is that it is kind of more of a switch rather than two studs poking out of either side. So you can do the whole, the pull thing. On this knife, the handle is a little bit long, so it's a little bit harder to access than, the axis lock that's generally positioned right here. You can do that, but you can also use your index finger and just pull down on it, right? It's going to be that area, it's right about here, that's going to kind of make it to where you really have to, whip it closed to get it to do that if you want to do it one-handed. So that's a little bit of a bump in the road. I think people will kind of, find their way around that for the most part. But considering we are looking at a very inexpensive knife, seriously, this is like a $40 knife. There are some things that I can give a pass to, considering, basically the cool factor of this, the innovation behind it. This knife and all of its variants will be listed in links down below, so you can check this out for yourself. Let's go ahead and talk about carry profile. By the way, as far as I know, this run, yeah, it does. Oh my goodness, my flashlight's not down here. Well, I think you guys can actually maybe see in there. In my light, there's bearings in there. Let's go ahead and talk about carry profile. So thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. You can see here that this is a little bit thick. This is kind of, now CJRB's got a lot of models that hint at maybe they're moving away from this blocky scale design, but this is very similar to other CJRBs that people have come to very much love, right? So it's really not that big of a deal, but it definitely is a little bit thicker than knives like the Para 3, just a little bit. How about height and length up against two knives that are a little bit awkward in the pocket and everybody loves anyway, the Spyderco PM2 and Para 3. Length is definitely longer than the Para PM2, and it's at least exactly the same length as the, it's longer than the Para 3, and it's at least exactly the same length as the PM2. In terms of height, it does have some spots that are a little tall, but I think the hump in the PM2 and Para 3, it still trumps it. I mean, it's still going to be, yeah, definitely still going to be a little bit taller there. So, you know, dimensionally, the biggest issue is going to be the thickness. And then let's go ahead and get a measurement of blade stock thickness here real quick. Blade stock thickness on the kicker is coming in at 125 thousandths, so Benchmade Griptilian territory. On the inside here, I wish I had my flashlight. There's no milling on the liners. It's solid all the way through for the most part, other than that area that makes room for the Omega springs. And then it's not countersunk, so the G10 scales sit right on top of it. So there is some heft here on this knife. Now, if you like heft, that's fine, but some people, you know, shy away from it. 4.62 ounces isn't bad. Let me remind everybody of what the beloved Ritter Hogue weighs. Pretty much exactly the same thing, right? So this is a little bit big. It is a little bit chunky. It is a little bit heavy, right? But it's no more or less than the Ritter Hogue, and it's about the same size with the same amount of cutting edge. If you like to wear athletic shorts or tight pants every day, this probably isn't going to be for you. If you work on a construction site or you just wear regular jeans or regular work pants, something like that, then you're probably used to carrying knives of this size anyway, and it's really not going to bother you all that much. There are going to be places where this is not legal, so check your local laws for sure. Okay, let's go ahead and do the hardware check. We didn't do that. Get out my tools here. You can pick up my tools as well as my flashlight that is also missing today. It's probably just upstairs. Down in the description, I think I linked them together so you can check that stuff out. They are not expensive. None of that stuff that I've got listed there that's between the tools and the flashlight is expensive, so you can pick those up. Yeah, the pivot is T8, and then the body screws, I don't even have to check it. They're T6. CJRB has traditionally done T6 body screws in combination with a T8 pivot, but the RIA suggests maybe they're considering moving away from that, which would be welcome. I don't like T6 screws. They are difficult to remove. They strip out easily, and they can sometimes chew the bits up on your T6, the T6 bit heads. It doesn't matter if they're WIA. A lot of people are, oh, you have to go to quality bit heads. Doesn't matter. It'll still chew those up, right? Even if they fit perfectly, it'll still chew them up. Different head sizes have different depths, and you know, sometimes the teeth on the head are, you know, sometimes they're harder or they're softer, right? I've found that when I slip with the bit, no matter how high quality the bit is, sometimes it just chews them up anyway. So that's why I don't like T6, but not that big of a deal. It's never a deal breaker, right? It's a screw that you got to be careful with if you plan to take this knife apart. Okay, let's talk about the anatomy here. I really like this sort of grayish blue G10 that they've got. They use this on a bunch of different models, and I like that. I also like the contrast between the grayish blue and this brassy colored pivot color. I don't know if it's actually brass or if it's aluminum that's just sort of gold, or I don't know. It looks nice. I really like it. This texturing here is not aggressive, but it's also not, you know, soft or anything like that. I would imagine it might fray your pants up a little bit over time, but it offers some welcome traction. And it's not as aggressive as some of the texturing that I felt on some other like some of Cold Steel's G10 knives. Oh my goodness. Or the, what is that Spyderco in LC200N, that new fisherman's knife with the lockback? Oh my goodness, that thing is, I mean, that makes sense though, right? Anyways, ergonomically, it's pretty good, right? This area up here, I suppose you could choke up on a bit, but it's not gonna, I'm not gonna suggest it because it's too close to the blade, and I don't know that it's really made to do that. The pocket clip is a little bit of a hot spot. This is their older style pocket clip. I really don't, that's not my favorite pocket clip, but I mean, it's okay, it'll do the job, but you can feel it a little bit. You're definitely gonna notice it if you use this knife continuously without gloves. But it's not really a deal breaker. As far as ergonomic lines go, it's pretty darn good. I'd give it a B+, which doesn't really mean it. I've been saying things like that lately in reviews. It doesn't mean a whole lot, but yeah, that's what I'd give it. If it was a paper and I was grading it, which also doesn't make sense because I've never been a teacher, then I would give it a B+. I can hold on to it, right? It fills the hand, feels nice. I feel locked in. It's good. This area up here, you know, where you're going to rest your thumb, I suppose because the switch is up here, you have to be a little bit careful about how much pressure and whether or not you're pulling back on it, because if you do that, you could disengage the blade. Now, I know people are, oh, that's a flaw with it. I think that is a pretty rare circumstance. Most of the time when I'm using this knife, I'm going to be holding it like this, right? If I'm doing this, I'm probably going to put my thumb much further up the blade if I'm doing, you know, whatever, movements like this, I guess. It's going to be pretty rare that I accidentally disengage. I think it would be just as likely to disengage a Benchmade axis lock during use, depending on where my hands are placed, right? Sometimes my hands are placed right on it. Use the Able lock on the Ritter Hogue. Sometimes my hands are placed right on the lock, right? You could say, well, if you pull back just enough, you could disengage. I think that's going to be pretty rare. I'll point it out either way. But yeah, I don't think that's something that you guys need to worry about. CJRB's blades, I like their tumbling. In this case, we have this long. If this were a Hinderer, I'd call it a Skinner grind. That's what the Hinderer calls it, but it's just a reverse Tanto. This is D2. As usual, CJRB's font is a little bit too big and bubbly. I think they need to make that smaller so that we can take a look at, you know, the beautiful tumbling they've got on this awesome budget blade, because we don't get to see tumbling like that on less expensive knives very often. Most of them are satin finished, so I think the font should be a little bit smaller. J1915 doesn't need to be there. I don't like to see China on the blade. It's just a personal thing. I'm from the USA, so I like to see USA on the knife, right? Other Chinese-made knives have found a way to get that China off the blade and maybe somewhere else. I don't know why. You know, it's one of those things that I just think like that. I don't like to see really the manufacturer of any other country. You know, just then I feel like everybody's probably like that, right? If you live in Italy, then you'd probably like to see made in Italy, and then that anything else that you buy from another country, you'd probably rather it was just blank, right? It's not necessarily anything I've got against any other country, but that's just, you know, I come from a time where if we saw China on a blade, you automatically thought, you know, low quality. This is obviously not the case anymore. You know, case in point, the knife we're looking at is very high quality for the money, but it's just one of those things that's buried in my mind. Like, I know where it's made. I bought it, right? I don't need to see that, and other companies are not putting that on there. So I don't know. That was rambly, and maybe there's no foundation for it, but anyways, this is D2. D2 is fine. I think that a lot of knife companies that are making budget knives are moving away from D2 and more towards you know, some of these alternative steels. I'd love to see 154 come into this 154 CM come into this territory, but I feel like that's kind of a long shot right now. I know CJRB is experimenting with 12C27N, so maybe we'll see more of that. That steel doesn't hold an edge as long, but it is stainless and much easier to sharpen. And I think that'd be a welcome change, because D2's been in this world for way too long. It's not that it's a bad steel, it's just we're getting bored with it, right? Everything is G10, D2, right? In this price range. So anyways, blade looks good. Some excess stuff right here doesn't need to be there. There's nothing in terms of utility, right? This text doesn't really stop it's not going to slow you down. Flat carries out about 85% the length of the blade, and plenty of thickness is carried out towards the tip. So, in terms of durability, geometry, it's going to be good there. It does not come down to what I'd call a thin edge. This is a pretty thick edge, but it'll still do your EDC tasks. There's nothing in the cutting path, right? And it's not really that thick, 125 thousandths. So it might not slice as efficiently as, you know, your Open L number 8, right? If you are, you know, trying to watch your carbs and you need the thinnest slice of bread that you could imagine at a picnic, well, you know, by God, the Open L8 is the way to go. But for pretty much everybody else in any other circumstance, the extra thickness behind the edge might slow you down a quarter of a second, making a cut into a cardboard box. So you're probably going to be okay there. I think the flipper tab is well shaped. This is definitely more of a light switchy sort of knife. Push buttoning it, you can do it, but I feel more comfortable resting up here and just sort of pulling back or rocking back on it. Excuse me. So that's the way I'd go. Fit and finish all the way around, excellent. All the lines meet up. It's got this nice G10 backspacer back here. We have steel liners that you can see, adding some nice, I don't know, just kind of breaking up the monotony of the same color, you know, G10 between the backspacer and the scale. So that's nice. We have a lanyard hole that's there for the 8 or 9 people who want it. It's not necessarily being prioritized over the clip, but this screw back here is. It's not that big of a deal because the knife still carries pretty deep, right? The pocket clip, the flaws with this pocket clip are that the screws are not recessed, so you're going to fight that a bit on your pants. And then the this sort of bill thing right here, I've talked about this before. This will likely catch on something and bend out. In fact, it's happened to me with CJRB knives. But taking a look at the RIA, it suggests that maybe they're moving away from that. On this knife, you're going to have to deal with this clip. If it bends out, you can take it off, bend it back. If it breaks, you might just have a nice budget knife without a pocket clip, right? That's probably going to be the way that it goes. Other than that, lockup, absolutely solid. It's very similar to an Axis lock. I mean, both recoil locks that I've handled now, absolutely 100% solid lockup. So that's nice because this is it's not a, I mean, the way that it functions isn't new, but the mechanism and, you know, for CJRB, it's new. So it's nice to see they got that right. And then the blade is completely and totally centered. It's a good knife. They come in at 40 bucks. It's really hard to not recommend a CJRB knife because, you know, they come in between $35 and $40 and they use materials that we expect. Their designs sometimes aren't absolutely perfect, but they're more than good enough for the price range. Of course, I can recommend this knife. If you're looking for an inexpensive knife that's made well and you like larger knives and you like Axis style locks and you like fidgety knives, this is definitely going to be something that is going to check a lot of boxes for you, right? CJRB makes a ton of different styles of knives. I'm going to be linking this knife, but I'm also going to be linking CJRB in general because there are a lot of people who watch my channel and they see some of my videos on my more expensive knives and they're like, great, but I can't afford this. So yeah, I want to point new people, especially in the direction of CJRB and other companies like them because they make great knives for the money. And, you know, if somebody's just looking for a inexpensive cutting tool that's well made, then yeah, CJRB is like, that's one of the first companies that I recommend every single time that happens. So check them out. Check out this knife and check out CJRB cutlery in general down in the description. Absolutely going to go on my cheap knives I like playlist and my most recommended knives playlist for sure. Guys, that's going to be pretty much it for today's review. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.